But I just wanted to read an excerpt from this book just to let you know. I actually bought this book, a hardcover copy of this book years ago, over 30 years ago. And it was autographed by the author. The author. Some say author. It was autographed by Elizabeth Nunez-Harrell because my friend was actually going to this school, City College, where she worked at in New York, and she was her professor. So she bought me a hard copy of the book and had the professor autograph it, and then she brought it to work for me. So along life's path, I had maybe given it away to somebody, or I didn't throw it away. I wanted to share excerpts from this book, and I just wanted you to get an idea as to what she was going through, right? In this book. This is like right before she met the Obia man, right? She met up with the Obia man. But, just in case some of y'all want to just shut it off because you're frightened of certain things, but I just felt that this really brought the story to life, the way she did this dialogue. I was in the scene. I could see it playing out. Some people can really go there with me. So just listen to this part of the book. I felt it was pretty good. For 8 years, at intervals of 2 years apart, she had watched her belly rise slowly, like yeast-filled dough, its surface growing rounder and rounder, smoother and smoother, and then stretching paper thin, inflated by an insatiable energy beneath it that cracked her skin along its dry spots, drawing white, long creases where the moisture was sucked into the hungry swelling. I'm talking about her pregnant belly. Finally, at the end of 9 months, finally, at the end of 9 months, within each of these intervals of 2 years, her belly fell suddenly, collapsing like underbaked bread, spitting out the center soft and harmless, still and lifeless. Not just one son, but two boys who fought to free themselves from the umbilical cord wrapped around their necks, twisting their bloodied bodies in rage, their faces distorted, their wrinkled fists clenched, their blind eyes rolling in their dull sockets until the midwife released them and they lay stiff and cold and blue in their mother's arms. The third pregnancy was more painful, and Hrothgar, her English lover, pitying her at last, called in his English doctor. Emilia did not protest, though she knew that the doctor could not help her. But then hope still dimmed the truth and made the illusion more real. She desperately wanted a child. Yet once again, in spite of the doctor, she gave birth to twin boys who strangled themselves, or as the malicious whispered, whom she strangled to death with her cord. Now, the fourth time that her belly rose, she accepted the truth. Feeling the heads of her twins, she was certain that this pregnancy, like the others, would be futile. When Hrothgar returned home from the cocoa estate that evening, he found her lying outstretched in his bed, staring vacantly at the ceiling. He did not ask. He simply said, "Twins again?" and laid his aging white body next to her. She knew that he had grown tired of her constant illness, but also that he would not ask her to leave. They were There were few English women on the island, none who would look at him. and he was obsessed with her body. Yet she lied. No, one child, she told him. This better be the last time, he said gruffly. She shut her eyes and shifted her body to the edge of the bed. After her mother died, she stayed with him because she had nowhere else to go. She was only 10 years old then, and her mother had been his cook. He did not touch her until 2 months after her 12th birthday, and then he promised if she would bear him a son. Old man that he was, he would will his cocoa estate and his house to her upon his death. She was not too young to know that at 60, he would not have long to live. That promise made her endure long nights of his body pressing roughly into hers. Was that why she was punished with dead babies? She had wanted no more nor less than any Trinidadian woman, a home that was hers, land she could pass on to her sons and to generations thereafter. What right had Hrothgar to the land? He and his people had crossed the seas and claimed it from her people as though God had given them rights. No, she stayed in Hrothgar's bed to reclaim that land. Mhm. And then the babies began to die. The first time she accepted it, it could happen to anyone. She was not specially marked. And the second time, she grieved for the loss of them, and she began to love them as if they had lived. She would make others to replace them, she said, consoling herself. The third time, she was more determined, but then she knew that they also wanted to live, that they fought against the strangling grip of the umbilical cord, accusing her with their anger. Then the land ceased to matter to her. She wanted her babies. She'd keep having them until she could birth them alive, or her womb could no longer hold them. She was not prepared to feel the despair she now felt when she knew that all her babies would die if the Igbo would not help her. Woo, I'm hot. It's his life, right? She waited for the time Hrothgar would go to Port of Spain to sell his cocoa. It would be soon, she knew. And when he left 3 days later, she was certain it would be at least a week before he would return. For she too had heard the talk about things going bad between the Portuguese traders and the English planters ever since the Portuguese found out the English thirst for chocolate. And when the dust from Hrothgar's horse finally settled back into the dirt trail that led from his house to the main road, Amelia did what she should have done years ago. She went to see the Igbo Taro, the most powerful Obia man on the island. The Igbo had sent for her many times before, but always she closed her ears to his messages. This time, fear made her drag her heavy body up the hill to his tiny hut. When he saw her after her torturous climb, the African shut his eyes. Her hair was all matted with sweat. She had lost her face with the swelling, and her once pretty mouth sucked at the air like an old donkey, her lips trembling. With his eyes squeezed together in a frown, the old Obia man screamed at her to leave his place. Shoo, get away, go, leave here, I say, shoo. But Amelia had reached his front door, and weak from exhaustion, her body collapsed onto one of his goatskin stools. The old Igbo danced around her with his knotted cane, still shouting, closing his eyes. He did not want to see her again. Get out, I say. Shoo, shoo. Her breathing still tortured and difficult. Amelia tugged at the cloth wrapped around his waist and dug her nails into his withered body. The old man's eyes shot open in pain, and Amelia pulled him to her with her eyes. Why didn't you come before? The Igbo softened. He stopped dancing. Hrothgar, she said the name of her English lover, softly and slowly. He didn't. You forget who you are. The Igbo would not let her finish. But the pain, Taro, you forget who you are, the Igbo shouted, anger blazing from his eyes. The pain, you forget who you are. The Igbo, whew. Mm-mm, mm-mm. All right, that was good. Woo-hoo-hoo. Oh, Lord, that one came from top of Mount Kilimanjaro, that one. All right. Whew. You forget who you are. The Igbo lowered his voice to a harsh whisper. That means he went, you forget who you are. I came from Africa. The Igbo put down his knotted cane and pulled a stool next to her. Those two in your belly, they will die like the rest. His voice was toneless and flat. Final, I can't help you now. He sat down. Please, Taro, the pain. Then stop it. Stop? Stop making them. Stop the babies. Amelia wiped the sweat off her top lip. The babies groaned in her belly and shifted their weight to her left side, contorting her body. The presumption. Okay, let me say it again, because now I get this accent. Amelia wiped the sweat off her top lip. The babies groaned in her belly and shifted their weight to her left side, contorting her body. The protrusion, momentarily throwing her off balance, made her look sadly comical. Defenseless, the Igbo leaned over and touched her where her navel was lying flat on the other side of her belly. Amelia cooled her hot face in his pity. Why, Taro? Why me? The villagers in Princestown say that Taro was 120 years old then. He knew everything. As a young man, the son of an Igbo chief from Enugu in the eastern region of Nigeria, taking instruction in Christianity from a white missionary on his father's insistence, he was betrayed into slavery and brought to Trinidad. And he remembered it all: Africa and freedom, slavery and colonialism. You lucky woman, he said finally, bitterly, as though regretting a moment of weakness. You lucky you still living. Amelia rested her head against the Igbo's polished tin wall, her eyes wandering around the ebony wood carvings that stood on a table in a corner of the room until they settled on a carving of a woman. Her face serene, her legs bent at the knees, her arms drawn to her back, her body poised for flight. Quietly, as though speaking only to herself, she murmured, I want children. You lie. God owes me children. A woman must have children. You lie. Cocoa, land, that's what you want. Amelia hung her head. Once before, no more. The gods owe you nothing. You sleep with that white man for land. Long ago, not now. I sleep with him for children. The Igbo snorted. Amelia grasped his arm and brought her face close to his. Help me, Taro, she whispered. Please, help me. I can't take the pain no more. This time is worse than ever before. I can't sleep. I can't work. It's their fingers. They claw at me and scratch me. I can feel their feet kicking. They know they're going to die and they want to kill me first. I know it. And it's their brothers that died who are helping them. Stop them, Taro. You can help me. Too late. The Igbo pushed her away and crossed his arms. You wait too late to see me. The Warahun, began Emilia, pronouncing the last syllable of the name of the South American Indian tribe as though it rhymed with moon. The Warahun? The old man's face wrinkled into a frown. Yes, I asked the Warahun, replied Emilia, not denying her desperation when one market day she spoke to the Waro Indian chief, who it was rumored was the only friend of a strange Portuguese, Vasco de Balboa, he was called, a white man who combed the beaches of Maruga like a stray dog defeated by vermin and disease. An educated man, they said he was, who once treated his son, Antonio de Balboa, like an outcast, a bastard, spawned by accident from the womb of his black wife. He pitied me. Pitied you? The Igbo wanted to laugh, but the frown etched on his face was too deep to alter. He said the spirits of my dead babies wanted a resting place. Emilia continued intensely. He said that I must give birth to a live child so that they can live in that child. If I don't, they will torment me. The Igbo grunted, and Emilia grasped the corner of his robe, forcing him to look at her. Help me, Taro. I beg you, help me. Perhaps because he felt challenged by the world, perhaps because he felt pity for Emilia, the old man decided to help her. Take off your clothes, he commanded. Do as I say. Emilia felt no fear in the sudden terror of his voice. She felt no anxiety. Her soul responded to a comforting familiarity in the voice's awesomeness, a protective security in its forcefulness. Like a child, she obeyed. Like a child, she was grateful that he had found her at last. Like a child, she was glad that he would take her back to the point from which she had strayed. She stripped her clothes off her swollen body with no restraint for a lost privacy. She exposed her heavy breast, her bulging belly, the hairy triangle above her thighs with the swift and personal detachment with which she had plucked feathers from dead chickens or had gutted the bowels of fish. She would expose herself. She would be ready for the Igbo to save her. The Igbo did not look at her body. His eyes became glassy and they fastened themselves to her spirit. His hand reached for her elbow as he guided her, naked as she was, to a place behind his tin hut where a smaller tin shed stood hidden among the trees. Inside, he made her sit on a wooden stool next to a heavy metal tub full of leaves soaking in the icy cold rainwater. Then he undressed and slowly he began to cleanse himself. He was no longer an old man. A strange youthfulness now possessed his body. They did not speak, and still the Igbo did not look at her. Emilia felt herself become a little girl again. She was watching the high priest cleanse himself while her dying mother stood at the doorway, flushed with pride that her little daughter, her only child, was becoming a woman in the ways of her people. And when the Igbo touched Emilia to cleanse her too, she saw again her mother's joy as she remembered it was then, when she was only 9 years old, and an Igbo priest, in spite of slavery, in spite of the Christian God his master had forced him to worship in his church, had performed his rites as her mother had asked him to, had performed his rites as her mother had asked him to, and made her a woman that day. After the Igbo bathed Emilia with the same icy rainwater with which he had cleansed himself, and after he rubbed her body with the sacred leaves he had blessed on the holy days of his gods, and after he anointed her nipples and her navel with his holy oils, he put on his robe and left her sitting there naked in the shed and went to his tin hut to pray. When he returned 5 hours later, he brought her clothes with him and helped her cover her trembling body, ashy and wrinkled from exposure. The Igbo became himself again, and now he stood over her, looking into her eyes, an old man. Let me read that again. The Igbo became himself again, and now he stood over her, looking into her eyes, an old man. In my home, where I come from, he began, pulling his robe across his right shoulder and holding his cane away from his body. And where you come from, twins are a bad thing. He paused and his eyes gazed outside at the blue sky as though seeking affirmation from an invisible authority. When he looked again at Emilia, his head was held high like a king who had vanquished his enemies. Emilia saw for the first time that the knots on his cane were really tiny carvings of men and women caught in various moments of activity. A carpenter, his hammer flung over his head, a jeweler, his fingers concentrated with exact precision on a gem beneath them, a weaver, her hands busy with the threads on her loom, a cloth dyer, a hunter, a farmer, a griot, a teacher, a singer, a judge, a warrior, and so on and on. They descended his cane, the people he knew in Africa. A woman who has twins, the Igbo continued, is Osu, outcast. In my clan, her children are left in the forest to die, or to live if their spirit is great. But the gods were kind to you. They let your children die. You are blessed. Your chi has smiled. I have prayed for you, but I can't help you now. You know in your body you carry twins again. The Igbo waited for Emilia to feel fear and despair. He watched her while the trembling began at the corners of her mouth, and before she could part her lips, he stopped her. They won't die. The gods won't kill them. They want to test you. You have forgotten the old ways. You don't come to worship here. Your mother, she was royal and she was loyal. She never forgot Africa. She brought you here when you was a child. She see you become a woman in the ways of our people, but you spit us out. Obia no good for you no more. That is why trouble follow you. That is why you make twins. You spit us out. But you get a chance now. The Igbo watched her closely. The Waro tells the truth. The spirits of your children will haunt you. But this time, if you prove yourself, you will have a new life. This time, your sons will live. But 2 weeks after they are born, you must do as your fathers before you did. Leave your twins in the forest at the mercy of our gods, at the mercy of their divine wisdom. Do that, and you will conceive again. One child. You will have one child. And in that child, the spirits of all your children will live. They will find a resting place. Do that. And don't forget the power that has helped you. I love this chapter. Were you not in the scene like I was in the scene? When the Igbo went and prepared himself, washed, cleansed himself, he went into a zone. He was in a spiritual trance, right? Because when I say that, that's the best way I could describe it in the West. But my thing is that he was deep in spirit. He didn't even see her nakedness. You know how in the West, nakedness is something for people to look upon. He was not looking at none of that. She was like a child unto him, right? And he even transformed in spirit, where he appeared to be like his younger self. His body was probably lean and cut like many of our elders abroad. Do you know what I mean? And he was not phased. He was doing the work of the ancestors. He was doing the work. And then he used the same water that he cleansed himself with, and he cleansed her with. He told her what to do, and she felt like a child. She felt protected. She felt covered. You understand what I'm saying? She didn't feel exposed. You understand? She felt this sense of comfort because she felt like a child under this elder's guidance and instruction. And this is one thing I know is something that is lost, and something that if it's still there in villages of Africa, this is something that we must cherish. Because you get too big, as they call it out here. You know, when we was kids, you still had a little reverence in America and with Southern people, where the young people knew their place, and they knew they wasn't elders yet. You know, they wasn't bigger than you. They couldn't just talk back, and they didn't have the wisdom of the elders, and the elders knew their place as elders, right? To instruct the young, to guide them, to cover them, right? So here she was, she forgot. Obia no good for you. She turned her back. She went with a white man, and she really abandoned her ways, right? So what happens is he's like, don't forget. This is why bad luck follow you, because you forgot. You forgot your people. You forgot where you came from. He said, don't forget the powers that has helped you. So when you look at some of the sufferation and the things that we go through, understand it's because we forgot, we have strayed. Some of us not of our own, most of us not of our own self, but this knowledge is here now, and we still have no interest And we wonder why these things are happening to us, things we don't even understand. And we keep asking God to show us, to guide us, and the answers are right there, but we're not tapping into it. We don't care, right? It's like you forgot. So I will return. Yeah, I have two different sections here that I want to share with you. So I will be back. Thank you so much for listening. I had fun reading that. I had fun. I was in the scene.